Welcome to the March edition of the ESE Blended Cafe, and we are so glad that you've been able to join us. We would like to welcome our parents that are here live in person, and also welcome those of you who are watching us through streaming. If you will remember, our goal for our Blended Cafe is to kind of twofold, to give our parents a better opportunity to ask us questions and become a little bit more informed about what goes on and why we do the things that we do here at the ESE department, and also to get your input. We want to be able to hear and be able to answer any questions that you have and just work together as a team. So tonight I'm here with myself, Debbie Anderson. I'm the ESE Director for Santa Rosa County, and we will do introductions. To my left is Ms. Deborah Ray, who is the Deputy Director. You can say hello.
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
And to my right, we have Ms. Lisa Templeton, and she is our first guest tonight, and she is the Program Facilitator and oversees our ESE Pre-K program. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
Awesome. Then our second guest tonight will be Mr. Gary Mitchell, and he oversees the hospital homebound program along with some of our auxiliary programs such as occupational therapy, physical therapy, and he will be joining us for the second part of the evening. Before we begin, I would also like to remind you that you may ask questions. If you are in the audience, just raise your hand and let us know, or if you are online, you can type your questions in and they will come directly to us and we'll be able to answer any of those questions. All right, then I believe right now we have a commercial.
The Florida Department of Education and the Santa Rosa County School Board have a survey available for you. This survey is for parents of students with individual education plans who are receiving special education services during the 2017-18 school year. All information provided will remain confidential, and you may submit one online survey for each child receiving services. The survey period is February 1st through May 31st, and it is for all parents of children with IEPs in pre-K through 12th grade. You can access the survey by going online to www.esesurvey.com. We thank you for completing this survey so that we might serve you better.
All right, welcome back. All right, we have Lisa Templeton here, and Lisa, why don't you just kind of give us a little bit of overview of what you do as a program facilitator and what programs that we have in Santa Rosa County.
Okay, we have the 3 to 5 program, which is based out of classrooms in our elementary schools primarily. We also have a Head Start program and slash VPK, minimal VPK program within the school system. The ESE program, of course, has an eligibility requirement in order to attend. So there has to be a delay in one or more developmental areas. To qualify for that program, we go by state guidelines for those eligibilities. I did bring some Child Find pamphlets in the back. That is pretty much the first step to gaining eligibility for the pre-K program. So you'd call our Child Find specialist, and our Child Find specialist that works with Santa Rosa County is primarily Terry Stoker, and she can be reached at 850-469-5425. So if you have concerns developmentally with your children, you can call Terry and she'll schedule a screening, and that's the first step in the process.
All right, can you explain the Child Find process a little bit more? What do they look for once the parents call? What happens at that point?
Okay, so if you call, you make an appointment with Terry or one of the other Child Find specialists who sometimes work with us in Santa Rosa, then she would have you come in and she would complete a screening with your child. And then she would look at the results of that screening and discuss them with you, and any areas of concern or any areas that showed a delay, she would make a recommendation for additional evaluations. And then that would come to our Child Find team, depending on the evaluations she requested. Could be a language evaluation, could be just speech evaluation, could be a developmental, could be a psychoeducational, which just means we want more cognitive testing than what we would get on a developmental. And then the evaluators schedule additional appointments with the family, and then all of those results come back and we determine eligibility based on those results.
Are there any other early warning signs that parents would look for? Like, what's typically something that a parent would call when they're asking about the child find process? Like, for example, my child isn't speaking yet, and I have some concerns. Can you kind of
That's a
elaborate on that?
typical that's a typical concern. They're either not using very many words, or they're not producing words accurately so that you're not understanding them. That would be an articulation problem. A language problem would be the lack of words or the lack of words to get wants and needs known. So a typical 2-year-old has about 200 words. So that's what you're looking for spontaneously for them to have about 200 words. We do also work very closely with the Birth to 3 program that's run by Sacred Heart. That is the Early Steps program. So children that are under the age of 2 would be referred to them for services, sometimes within the home or through therapists in the community.
So if they're under 2, they would go through that. Now, if they're over 2, is that where you would start looking at the screeners for the 3 to 5-year-old?
Yeah, usually past about 2 years and 3 months, they refer directly to Child Find, because we can start serving them in a classroom at the age of 3. So we prefer to just skip the early steps process if they're that far ahead. If they're over 2 years and 3 months, by the time they're evaluated, they're almost 3 years old, so that we can start them in the classrooms.
So is that the youngest age? Is it like 3 years on their birthday? Is there that criteria for them?
We start, if like an early steps child, we transition them into the 3 to 5 program. So we start them anywhere within a month of them turning 3. If they're coming through Child Find and they're close to turning 3, we can start them. There's no magic on their birthday. They can't start until on their birthday. We start them within a month or 2 of their 3rd birthday, or after. Any time between 3 and 5 years old that anyone has a concern about their child developmentally, we want to make sure that we provide those additional services so that they're ready to go to general education kindergarten.
That's good. That's awesome. Let's backtrack just a little bit so that maybe our parents have I know a lot of parents that I talk to, they wonder what happens during that screening process. What goes on when they bring their little one in here to be screened?
Okay, well, Terry sits down with them at a little table in our screening room, and the parent is in the room with them. There's a questionnaire that they can be filling out while Terry's working with their child, and she runs through a developmental screener. It's called the Battelle Developmental Inventory, and it's just a sample of skills in each one of the developmental areas. So cognition, socialization, adaptive, which would be self-care skills, motor skills, language skills, and daily living skills. So they would run through the little screener, which is about 10-15 items in each one of the areas, and then she has a scoring system that determines whether they have a delay or not in those samples.
Okay. So after that happens, how long is it before the parents get that information back as far as whether their child would meet that eligibility? And just kind of talk about the eligibility process for a moment. What would make them eligible versus not eligible or ineligible to receive services?
Okay, well, the screening results are discussed with them right then. She scores it immediately, and she goes over those results with them. And then she tells them, I'm going to recommend further evaluations in the following areas. And then the evaluators would make additional appointments. So for a language concern, they would make an appointment with either Sherry Cross or Phyllis Griffin, who are our 2 diagnostic language evaluators or speech evaluators. And they would come in and do a whole language type evaluation with them. Those are not scored immediately, but usually the evaluator that's working with them will give them some idea, as to whether they have concerns or if they feel like they're right on track for their age. A developmentalist's usually involved, and that's Carla Fisher for us. And she contacts the parents and schedules an appointment, and she does a more in-depth version of the battalion. So it has like where you had 10, maybe 15 items in each section. This has more like 30, 35 items in each section. So it takes a little bit longer, about an hour to administer. And she's really good about working with the kids and breaking it up if they don't have the attention span to go that long. And then she again compiles her results, and they're all sent to a single location where all the evaluations are compiled, and then they're sent to a liaison to hold the meeting. So to determine that, we look at all the evaluations, and we have to go by what the state deems is standard scores for eligibility. And typically we're looking at it, an average score being 100. So you're looking at a delay of being about 85 to 115 is going to be within that average range, and anything below that is going to be somewhat of a delay. So we look at the range of the delay to determine what kind of services they're going to need off of that.
So now a question that comes up. So you have your child screened and they make it to the next step and they get evaluated. They go to the meeting and they become eligible for a program. When they get to that classroom, walk us through what that would look like and what happens in the classroom. What skills are they taught? What does a typical ESE pre-K classroom look like, and what happens during the course of the day?
Okay, well, I'm going to start with the IEP. So at that meeting where they discuss all the evaluation results with the parent, a plan is also written. So the teacher, that would be the classroom teacher, and the therapists that would be involved with that child would all be at that meeting, and they would develop a plan, an individual education plan, and that would determine what they're going to be working on in the classroom. So the skills that they're delayed on the evaluations would be the skills that they're going to address, the areas that they're going to address developmentally in their IEP. So when they get to a classroom, the teacher has a plan to be working on. So typically when you're looking at a 3-year-old classroom or a 4-year-old classroom, most of the kids are going to be working on the same types of skills. So you'd come in and she'd have all of the children's needs listed, and that would be what they would focus on throughout the day. So during circle time, for example, the kids would all come in, they'd sit at circle time, and they're going over the calendar and what they're going to have for lunch that day, and they're singing songs and they're working on colors and numbers and shapes. And she might focus on the child who doesn't know any colors or shapes. That would be the questions that she would ask that child, the child that had a delay in more academic skills, finding their own name in print kind of things. Those would be the kinds of questions she would ask that child. So all of the children would be participating, so no one would be focused out as to, you could never tell which child was supposed to be delayed in which area, because they're all feeding off of the same activity. Then they might go into a small group activity where they'd rotate among the tables to do individualized tasks that would focus on the needs that were listed on their IEPs. So that might be a group of 2 or 3 kids, or 1 or 2 kids, depending on the size of the class and how many adults are in the room. And they would rotate through the tasks. So the paraprofessional might have a skill that they're working on sorting shapes, and the teacher might have a skill that she's working on writing their names. And then the speech pathologist might also be in the room, and she's working on answering questions that start with a who, what, when, or why. And those activities would be on a timer, so they'd rotate those activities within their attention span. Then they might have a snack. Then they might have a large group activity, like a PE type activity. We do have adaptive PE coaches that also work with our pre-K students, so they take them outside or go to a bigger open classroom that might have a gross motor activity going on, an obstacle course, or a ball, playing ball, or even going out onto the playground where they're going to have things that they're going to need to do, like climb the ladder. Kids that avoid climbing the ladder, that PE coach is going to get them out there and make them climb that ladder. Then they'd have lunch, then they might have a story. We also have a rest time because we do have classes that last more than 5 hours, and the state says we do need to have a rest time in there for our 3 and 4 year olds. Then they might do another structured activity before they get on the bus.
What would be the biggest difference between like ESE pre-K and that level of support versus regular pre-K?
Like a daycare type pre-K or a church-based pre-K. Our teachers are certified, and they are trained to deal with children with delays, so some of those things might not be focused on in a regular pre-K classroom. They do tend to do a curriculum with academics, but it's a group-based curriculum, so the things that your child may need individualized would not necessarily be focused on in a public pre-K classroom. Whereas our teachers are certified to do that, so they're going to be pulling them into those small groups and working individually to get those activities accomplished.
So when our students are in this program, is it like they adjust the IEP as children start to master certain skills?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a time that they would exit the program, or how does that process work for our parents that may be looking at sending their child there? What is that process, and what does it look like as they get closer to the kindergarten age?
Well, our goal is always general education kindergarten with every one of our children. We get them as close to the process as we possibly can, and then we recommend supports for them to go into kindergarten with if those are needed. So if they should reach a point where they're age appropriate and they can handle a general education population, we do some reevaluations, and we recommend that the parent pull them out of the pre-K program and put them into a general education type program. And we would discuss some of those programs that are available within the community for them to access.
Okay. What if they don't, and say they in that short period of time that they don't test out of the program? What happens when if they're in the ESE pre-K program and it becomes kindergarten time for them? What happens at that point?
We have a meeting with the kindergarten team and the pre-K team in order to be on the same page so that the receiving kindergarten teachers and team understand the needs of this particular child and can provide those supports when they're in the kindergarten setting. If that's academic support, then that's what we recommend, and then they make a plan for that. Most times our kids go on with just speech and or language therapy.
Does that eligibility area goes away at any particular time?
The developmentally delayed status goes away at the age of 6. So typically if they are not age appropriate in those areas, then we're going to look at an alternative program for them to qualify for when they go into the kindergarten setting.
That's good information, because I think it's important for our parents where if they begin into that kindergarten year, that they're aware if their child turns age 6 during that school year and is still having any problems, then they may want to work with their schools in ensuring that the correct interventions and the correct process is going for them to be able to continue with academic supports.
And we try to accommodate that developmental delay eligibility prior to them going to kindergarten. So in other words, when they're still in pre-K, we're going to look at the fact that they're still developmentally delayed and we still need some services. So we're going to find another alternative for them so that it doesn't come up and surprise anybody when they're going to turn 6.
I know that's important for our parents, because I know as a mother, having a child that when they go into kindergarten is a big step. It's a big step for the parents and the child. Making sure that they can meet the requirements, and now kindergarten is so academically structured, it's very different than what it ever used to be in the past.
So it's pre-K now.
Yes, exactly.
It's not simply go and play and have snack and take a nap.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of kindergarten classes out there now that, gosh, nap time is almost non-existent anymore because of the requirements that are there.
You have to cover too much in the short time that you have them.
Awesome. Well, parents, we are coming to a conclusion on the pre-K program. Please remember, if you have any questions, if you're in the audience, just raise your hand. And if you are at home streaming, type your questions in, and we'll be happy to address those. All right. Any other closing remarks, Ms. Templeton?
No.
And if they have any questions or concerns, they can call up here at 983-51, your extension?
Oh, mine is 5582.
5582, and you'll be able to reach Ms. Templeton, and she'll be able to help you with those.
And we do have 38 classrooms right now, so I am out in the schools quite a bit, but my secretary, Jada Southers, is able to answer a lot of questions and take messages.
That's awesome. 38 classes. All right. Well, right now we are going to go to a commercial.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Templeton.
The Florida Department of Education and the Santa Rosa County School Board have a survey available for you. This survey is for parents of students with individual education plans who are receiving special education services during the 2017-18 school year. All information provided will remain confidential, and you may submit one online survey for each child receiving services. The survey period is February 1st through May 31st, and it is for all parents of children with IEPs in pre-K through 12th grade. You can access the survey by going online to www.esesurvey.com. We thank you for completing this survey so that we might serve you better.
All right, welcome back. I would like to remind all of our parents that to be able to ask questions, on your screen at the top right should be a small chat box. And that is where you can go ahead and type your questions in, and we will be able to see those and respond to you. All right, well, welcome. We have the ESE Department's Teacher of the Year, and that is Mr. Gary Mitchell, who we honored this last Friday at the Teacher of the Year banquet, and that's quite an honor, so thank you, Mr. Mitchell. But Mr. Mitchell is our program facilitator, and tonight he is going to specifically be talking about our hospital homebound program, as well as what we call ESY, which is our extended school year program. So welcome, Mr. Mitchell.
Glad to be here.
All right, we see you've got the dress code, and you have the red on tonight.
I read the memo.
Very good. So why don't you start out talking to us a little bit about the hospital homebound program.
Okay. Hospital homebound is set up for students that, for whatever medical reason they may have to stay out of school for a period of time. That could be either an injury that they've had and they need time to recover. It could be surgery. It could be a more devastating illness such as cancer or leukemia, or in some cases it could be a student that's got really severe mental health issues. And within the state of Florida, hospital homebound is actually its own exceptionality, just like any of the other exceptionalities that are under the ESE umbrella. So in order for a student to be eligible, though, we have to meet the state criteria. And one part of that is there's a medical referral that the parents have to take to the child's physician. And the physician is actually one of the guiding factors for homebound. They have to fill out the medical referral, give a diagnosis, and also say that the student is going to miss at least 15 days of school. Now that they don't have to wait. Sometimes there's a misconception within the school that they have to wait until they actually miss 15 days, but that's not true. The doctor just has to say they're going to miss at least 15 days. They sign out, they fill the paperwork out, they put an expected beginning date, and also just kind of what an expected termination date would be, so that we can kind of have an idea how long we're looking for this student to be on homebound. So they fill that out, they sign it, they send it back to me. The parent also fills out an information sheet that has a release of information, so that if I have to speak to a physician, I have permission to do that on a information sheet, and the guidance counselors at the school also have to fill out a section and sign, so that the school knows what's going on. And then what happens is, once all that gets to me, I date stamp it so that I can be fair to everybody. I work on the referrals for as they come in. I begin looking for a teacher to work with this student. A lot of times the student gets about 4 hours a week. That's another misconception. A lot of times parents go in thinking, oh, I'm going to get a teacher to come into the house and teach the student just like they were if they were at school. And really, homebound does not replicate a school day. Homebound focuses on content. What does the student have to have in order to stay up with their class? So we get all that. I get a teacher, and then we actually hold a meeting, kind of like what Ms. Templeton was talking about. We have to make the student eligible for the program, and we write an IEP. A lot of our students are general ed students, so their IEP is not as detailed as it would be for a student that has multiple disabilities or exceptionalities, and we would still write one that fits that student, mainly with academic goals, because that's what we're focusing on with homebound, so they don't get behind. And once we do that, the teacher's there, teacher and parent exchange numbers, they talk about when they can come see the student. All of my teachers within that are homebound instructors are all teachers within the school district. So our homebound program is actually an afternoon program where teachers cannot leave the school they teach at until their contract day is over. And then we set up time, and then the teacher talks to the child's classroom teachers, gets that work, and goes and presents it to the student, and they work on that, leave homework until the student is able to come back to school. And hopefully they've worked on the same skills, the same content, so when they do come back, they're not lost. They know exactly what the rest of the class is doing, and they can just pick up where they left off.
Can you tell us a little bit about that 15 days? Because I get a lot of calls just from parents, and they know that their child may be out for 2 weeks. They've had surgery. The doctor said they're going to be out for 2 weeks. They've been told, hey, let's set them up for homebound. So during that 2 weeks that they're going to be out, they're receiving instruction. So can you offer clarification as to what a parent may do in that instance, and what help would be available at the school-based level? Because I know you have those conversations.
We do, and state criteria is at 15 days, and that's 15 school days. You don't get to count weekends, and you don't get to count holidays that we're not in school. For those students that are only going to be out for that short amount of time, maybe 2 weeks, which is actually only 10 days, the best thing that I talk to parents, I talk to schools, is that parent to work with those schools, contact the guidance counselors, and see if they can get that work they're missing. And work on what they can while they're out, and the things that they still have trouble with, then talk to those teachers when they come back and see if they can get them caught up. The majority of schools, when they know it's not the student's fault, you can't help when you had surgery or things like that. The majority of schools are really good about working with parents and students so they don't get behind.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Good. Well, I know that this is a time where for parents it can also be pretty emotionally challenging for them, especially if their child is involved in an accident of some type, and it's not what they would expect to be having to do. Are you able with that release of information to help walk the parents through gathering up whatever information that they need? I know I actually experienced it and had a daughter of mine that was put on hospital homebound, who was in an accident and ended up with a traumatic brain injury. And it was very, for me, it was very confusing because I was trying to handle all of her medical needs, and then when this came on top of it, is that something that as a district that you do, is to assist the parents?
I do. With that release of information, I'm able to talk to the physician or the physician's assistant or the office manager, whoever I can talk to. I'm able to talk to them, get their suggestions, find out some more limitations, because sometimes when a parent is going through something traumatic that's happened to their child, a lot of times that's not their focus. Their focus is their child and their child getting well. And that's kind of my philosophy for a homebound student, whether that is an accident, whether they have been devastated by cancer. That's one thing that we can take off their plate, is educationally we can handle that. And I tell parents at meetings a lot of times, okay, take the education part off your plate. That's our job now. You concentrate on your child and getting your child well. That's what your job is. So with that release of information, though, I am able to talk to physicians and find out what limitations, what we can do, sometimes even finding resources that can help the parents. Maybe it's a support group or something to help those parents. And they get a lot of that, but sometimes they get so much information, it gets lost in the shuffle. And I wanted to speak a little bit about when I was talking about that physician signing off. The state of Florida requires a medical doctor to sign that. I get a lot of medical referrals that I have to call the parent back and say, I can't accept this. And it's not so much on the accidents or the diseases, but when we start talking about mental health, the state of Florida requires a medical doctor, and when you go into the mental health realm, a psychiatrist is a medical doctor. A psychologist or a licensed mental health counselor, they cannot sign a medical referral. And our philosophy and the state's philosophy is if you have a student that's going out with anxiety, depression, types of phobia, if it's so severe that they can't go to school or they can't leave their house, they need to be followed by more than just a pediatrician. If it's so severe, they need to be hooked up with a psychiatrist who has a treatment plan, scheduled therapy sessions, and we get a copy of that so that we know that and we follow up to see if the student's actually following through with that plan. Because that's one of the things that's part of the hospital homebound. They have to do their part as well when we get in that mental health realm.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Parents, just a reminder, if you have questions about hospital homebound, go ahead and enter them into the chat box. And now we're going to get Mr. Mitchell to go on and talk to us with something that we start looking at right now at this time of year, is extended school year. Talk to our parents about what extended school year is and how their child would become eligible for the program.
All right, extended school year, you'll hear a lot of it at your child's school as ESY, and once you learn what extended school year, you'll start saying ESY. That's a program that we offer during the summer for our students, our ESE students, to continue working on some of those skills they've been working on throughout the school year. It's not to teach a new skill. And sometimes parents have that misconception that they're going to go in and start working on new goals and they're going to be ahead when school starts the next year. And that's not it at all. It's maintaining or working on those same goals and objectives they've worked on all school year. Sometimes it's easier to say what ESY is not before we move into what it is. ESY is not just an option like summer camp. It's not free babysitting. It's not something that the student attends because they've always done it. ESY is an IEP decision just like any of the other parts of the IEP. And with that being said, there has to be data to show that that student needs ESY. And it can be several things. It could be, regression and recoupment. Regression means that they're going to lose a lot over the summer. Now, all kids lose something over the summer. My own children lose things over the summer, but that doesn't mean that they need a special program. We're talking about those students, when you hear that word recoupment, that it takes so long for them to recoup what they've lost that they're losing out on what they need to be learning the next school year. So it's an IEP team decision. It's not just regression and recoupment. We have some kiddos, we have some of our kids that are in a behavior focused class, and they need that structure. They need to keep up with those point sheets. Those type of students. Maybe we have a student that is right on the edge of a language skill. We may have some students of our ASD population, and they've worked all year, and they're right on that edge to start communicating, and we don't want them to lose that when summer starts. So maybe they would be eligible. Now, the other key thing is you can't just come to an IEP meeting and say, yeah, I think they need it. It's data driven. So the teacher that they're has to bring data to that IEP to show, yes, they are losing over long weekends or breaks. Yes, they are at this point. They're almost there. Yes, they do need to continue those behavior plans that are in place. So it's all data driven, and it's driven by the IEP. I get calls every summer from parents that say, oh, I just heard about that ESY program. How do I get my child in? It's not like that. I can't just say, yes, we can put your child in. It's an IEP team decision. ESY has grown. We have 4 schools, 2 elementary, 2 middle and high, both on the north and south end that we provide services to. But again, the main thing is to know it is an IEP team decision, and it is data driven.
How do they, if they're determined eligible, is there transportation? Is it an all-day program? Or is there some variety to it?
Right now, we actually, because every student is different and everybody doesn't need the same thing. So ESY can look different for different kids. We do have face-to-face 2 sessions. We have a session 1, which runs for 3 weeks. It's Monday through Friday. The students are there from 8:30 to 12:30, working on those skills. We have a second session, usually starts about the week after the 4th of July. 3 more weeks, Monday through Thursday, and at that IEP, when we're deciding what's best for the team's deciding, they decide, does this student need to attend session 1? Do they need to attend session 2? Or do they need to attend both in order to get what they need over the summer? We also offer, maybe the student really doesn't need to come. Maybe they just need some packets sent home. Maybe that's what they need, and that's the form. So there's a lot of different options. If they are attending ESY, we can provide transportation. We do have drop-off spots within the county where if the student's not being picked up at their home, maybe the parent works and it's easier for them to go drive to a drop-off station where a bus comes and picks up those kids. We have that. Or parents can bring them as well. So there are options within the ESY program.
Gary, I know that every summer it never fails, and since this is a recorded option, parents may view our website to get additional information, which we hope. But there are always parents transitioning in the summer, where if they're coming from out of district and their team has decided that they have ESY services, how does that communication go? They reach you, they talk about previous services?
You know, when students are transferring in, and just like any other program, we honor that IEP that's coming out of district or out of state, and if it has ESY on there, then we do everything we can to provide the service based on what that IEP says. Now, it's a little bit harder because we don't know the student. All we know the student by is paper, so we don't have that communication. And when you said that, it made me think too, sometimes parents think ESY is going to be the best thing ever, and sometimes you really, really have to focus on that child. And I'm thinking of sometimes our young ASD kiddos that are sounding like ESY would be really a good thing. But you have to remember, a lot of our kiddos where transition is really hard, they may be going to a brand new school, brand new bus driver, brand new paras on a bus, brand new teachers, brand new paras, and sometimes that's a little overwhelming. And sometimes that's maybe not the best for those kids to do. But certainly, we're going to honor those IEPs that are transitioning if and do the best we can with the limited knowledge that we have.
Awesome. Why is it that we start looking at whether a child is eligible or not so far in advance? I know in our meetings that we are starting in the second semester, we start really having those in-depth conversations.
We want to be sure that we're prepared for the students that really need ESY. And when I say being prepared, we want to make sure that we have enough staff, we want to have enough parapros, assistants, we want to make sure we have enough therapists to provide those needs. So it's really important when you go to your child's IEP to talk about that ESY and not wait to the last minute, because like I said, preparation, getting ready for the 4 schools and making sure transportation's lined up and really making sure we have enough staff, because one of the things we do, some kids on their IEP says they're in a class with a 3-to-1 ratio. If they say 3-to-1 on their IEP during the school year, we're providing that during ESY as well. So the earlier we know, the better we can plan.
There's also, is there equipment and items like that, personal items that we have to sometimes move from one school to a next?
We do, and I really get therapists involved on what the students need, because, like I said, chances are, unless your child attends one of the 4 schools that we offer ESY, then we're going to have to move any equipment that they need to the school. And so the earlier we can find that out, the better.
Gary, can you tell us a little bit about that abbreviated schedule? Because you mentioned that it could be 4 days a week and it's half a day. Like, I know sometimes there are questions in IEPs that there were 90 minutes of language services. Does that mean that student is going to automatically get language services of 90 minutes in that extended school year program?
No, because, we're working on an abbreviated day. The students are only there 4 hours. And again, if that student is at a place where they truly need the service, maybe that's why they're coming to ESY. They may get a lot, but a lot of times it's still an IEP team decision. A lot of times for our students, if they're getting 90 minutes or 60 minutes during the school year, a lot of times they'll get 30 minutes during ESY. But it's not something that we say every kid gets cut in half, because it is all individualized. But it is just keeping in mind that it is an abbreviated school day and it's 4 days a week. So we just look at every child, and every child's different.
Well, thank you, Gary. That information's been very helpful, and we hope, one thing we hope is that for our parents and families that, they don't have to go through a situation that they would have to contact you for hospital homebound. But if and when it does happen, please make sure that you know that we're here to support you and to ensure that we give your student the very best service that we can.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, sir.
If you get in that situation with the hospital homebound and you think your child needs it, the guidance department at your child's school, they have the medical referral and the request for information. So that's where you start. I want every parent to start at their school so that guidance knows what's going on.
That would be really extremely important to be able to make that homeschool connection and keep that relationship going. And then if you have also any ESY questions, please make sure, again, that stands for Extended School Year. I try to make sure we always explain to our parents and our viewers what all of our acronyms mean, because in ESE, just about everything is an acronym. And with that, we'd like to remind you that next month, the April Cafe will have one of our hot topics on it. It's been a hot topic for the last couple of years, and it will have our program facilitators that work with the autism program. So if your child is on the spectrum, or you know someone who is, please let them know that that is what the topic will be for April, and we look forward to having you join us for that. And at this point, if you don't have any questions, we will say good evening to you and see you in April.
The Florida Department of Education and the Santa Rosa County School Board have a survey available for you. This survey is for parents of students with individual education plans who are receiving special education services during the 2017-18 school year. All information provided will remain confidential, and you may submit one online survey for each child receiving services. The survey period is February 1st through May 31st, and it is for all parents of children with IEPs in pre-K through 12th grade. You can access the survey by going online to www.esesurvey.com. We thank you for completing this survey so that we might serve you better. The Florida Department of Education and the Santa Rosa County School Board have a survey available for you. This survey is for parents of students with individual education plans who are receiving special education services during the 2017-18 school year.
I can say where they were last year. I haven't had a contact with the administration to see if it's okay. But years past, the elementary
That's new. Right. Literally, I played elevator music. So I'll fade black here.
Now my email to ask administrators if we can come back, we always do.
Button.
Every year that I've been here.